You're listening to episode number 24 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of the Play Your Position podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 11th, 2014, Veterans Day. And in honor of vets past, present, and future, I am recording a special audio postcard that is based on something I wrote a few years ago when I was reflecting on the passing of my grandfather, who happened to serve in World War II in the South Pacific. I'm really excited to share this with you today, as I have been a long supporter of soldiers, and despite the fact that war is never pretty, I know it's part of our life, it's part of our world, and the men and women who raise their hand and say, I want to serve, need to be recognized, not just on this day, but every day of the year. So this is my little part in giving back to a community that does so much to protect the freedoms that I value so dearly in what I do every day, in the way I can raise my children, in my educational system, and the ability to walk around and feel safe. So again, vets, if you are listening, thank you from the bottom of my heart. For 3 years, while my grandfather was in the South Pacific during World War II, he and my grandmother wrote letters to each other every day. One of my most vivid memories of the weekend of his memorial service in 1993 is of me and my cousins sitting in the parlor of his home reading those letters. For hours we sat on the threadbare Persian rug, boxes open and letters sprawled out among us, reading, mostly to ourselves, but every now and then out loud when someone came across a passage that was particularly beautiful. The sheer volume of their correspondence was awe-inspiring and a testament to their commitment to each other, their faith in the future, as well as their underlying uncertainty about whether or not that horrible war would ever end, and their letters would be all that was left of the life they had promised to share with one another. It was more than any one of us could digest in one sitting. And what I took away from the letters I did read was the power of the love my grandparents had for each other. See, Grandpa was a doctor in the Army, so he didn't see the front line, just the aftermath. And honestly, I'm not sure which is worse, if you can even put a value on one side or the other. You know, he didn't write much about what he saw in the letters, not in any great detail. It does go without saying, though, that what he witnessed was gruesome. In all the years I spent with him for Thanksgivings and summer visits, not once did he talk about the war. And I've come to learn that this is quite common among veterans, especially World War II vets. They just didn't talk about what they saw in common company, and certainly never in front of children. Some of them, I've also come to learn, never talked about it at all with anyone. And while progress has been made in this department to a degree, the number of soldiers who don't talk about the atrocities of war still outnumber those who do. Now, what he wrote about most was how much he cherished my grandmother and his children, how much he missed them, how he looked forward to the day he would come home to be a husband, a father, and a community doctor again. They were full of optimism and hope, and Granny did the same thing. She wrote about daily things, how the kids were doing. The letters weren't always very long, just a page or two of conversation, anchors to hold on to in an uncertain sea of political upheaval. Would my beloved ever come home? Was a question I imagine Granny asked every single day as she busied herself with keeping the house and being a mother to my dad and aunt, who were both under 5 during Grandpa's deployment. Would I ever see my wife and children again was most certainly his. After reconnecting with a friend from college a few years ago, I got to thinking about the power of letters. Real letters, mind you, the kind you write on paper with a pen and seal in an address-stamped envelope and drop in a mailbox. In our brief email exchange, I let him know how great it was to see he is doing well with a family, living life as we all hope to live. I also told him I still had all the letters he wrote to me when I was working in Alaska during the summers between college semesters. His reply was, "Funny how times change. Do you think that in another 20 years, we'll be still saving all of our emails and Facebook stuff?" His question gave me pause. In 20 years, I wonder, will Facebook even be around? Or will the landscape of communication and social networking as we know it today be completely unrecognizable in 2034? If a master system fails somewhere and all our data is lost, then the point of saving anything electronic becomes moot, doesn't it? Also, and you can call me old school, an email or a comment on Facebook will never be in the same league as a handwritten letter sealed in an envelope that came in the mail with a postmark stamp on it that someone took the time to sit down and actually write. The ease of staying instantly connected is certainly valuable in an era when we are all so busy and live on all places across the planet. I imagine it's been the saving grace for thousands of soldiers and their families during deployment. Our communications with loved ones are created and received in seconds, not days, weeks, or months. I don't know about you, but I'm always grateful for the quick note from my daughter at school, or the "I'm thinking of you," or I, again, imagine for soldiers, "I'm still alive," is an important message to receive as we move about our business. These gestures of thoughtfulness can buoy us through an otherwise cluttered life of information and time commitment overload. I think about the sailors in the days of Magellan and Captain Cook who didn't hear from loved ones for years or possibly ever, and how even a brief word from a loved one back home could have saved some of them from going mad. Even as recently as 100 years ago, letters took days to reach their destinations. And to people living in that time, days seemed like a huge improvement over the past. I'm sure Granny's letters to Grandpa and his to her took a week or more to arrive. By writing at least one letter every day, you assured your loved one would never go without, at least for very long. But in my opinion, we have traded something irreplaceable and of tremendous value for speed and convenience, something my grandparents knew, and certainly many of us old enough to know a world before the internet know, when writing letters was the only way to send our private thoughts to people we care about. Every now and then, I've been known to print an email from someone and tuck it away in a special box I use for such sentimental things. But those one-page sheets just don't come close to what I have in that trunk in my attic, stuffed with letters from a very, very distant past. I doubt my grandchildren will be sitting around trying to retrieve old text messages from obsolete phones they find in the pile of stuff I leave behind. I mean, a string of LOLs or 143s, which is code for "I love you," isn't something you're going to save and read again and again, savoring not only the meaning of the words, but also the feel of the paper in your hand, the slant or curl of the handwriting, the look of the stamp, the shape of the envelope. That tactile experience just cannot be replicated in digital format. Reading a letter is a beautiful and private sensory experience. It takes time, and we naturally have to slow down our busy pace, find a comfortable place to read it so we aren't interrupted, and possibly give ourselves extra time to read it through more than once. A text message or an email just doesn't render anything close to the overall effect reading a personal letter does. Now listen, I'm as much a part of this new way of communicating as anyone else. Guilty as charged, and I don't write real letters much anymore. I still send cards for special occasions with quick handwritten notes inside, but the days of sitting down and composing letters in longhand are behind me now. Even on the rare occasion when I do write letters, I tend to type them on the computer, print them out, and then send them that way because I can type and correct mistakes a lot faster than I can when writing on monogram stationery. It's part of progress, I suppose, and a need for speed, and a natural reflection of the changing times. but a piece of my heart aches for what has been lost. And there are times when, just as I long for another chance to sit at the table at 24 Forest Street with Grandpa and share a meal, I also long for the return of letter writing the way it used to be, if only for the intimate connectedness between writer and receiver that is inherently part of such a thing. On this Veterans Day, when I remember my grandfather and the service he gave for his country, as well as honor all the men and women who have also served, are serving now, and will serve in the future, this is my audio letter to you. Thank you for what you do, and God bless. Hey team, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, the place where stories matter and we make yours count. Make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes if you haven't become a subscriber already, so you never miss another episode. Question: are you on our email list? If not, you're missing out on your chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card every third Thursday of the month when we give one away to a lucky subscriber. Would your month be a little better with a $25 gift card to use on Amazon? Go now to maryloukaser.com/subscribe to find out more. Again, that's maryloukaser.com/subscribe.
Thanks for listening to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at maryloukaser.com.